If you're a millennial and you overthink everything, this is probably why. I don't think it's really about personality. I think it's about how we grew up. Think about your first real responsibility. For a lot of us, it was a Tamagotchi. You leave for school, you come home, and it's either freaking out or already dead. And yeah, it was just a toy, but it still felt like your fault. That's kind of the lesson. Things fall apart when you stop paying attention. So you learn to watch everything. You learn to worry. Then came MSN Messenger. Instead of saying what we felt, we posted song lyrics and waited. And sometimes it worked, which quietly taught us that you don't always have to speak up. Fast forward to your 30s, and when you look back, it's never the big moments. It's the small ones. The day you didn't say anything. The month you didn't save anything. The year you stayed longer than you should have. And the uncomfortable part? You usually don't notice them while they're happening. Those choices don't feel important until one day you realize that was the moment. That's what this video is about. 10 quiet decisions people make in their 20s that shape everything later. Decision 1. Your relationship with money. Money in your 20s is weird. Not because you don't care, but because you don't really know how to care yet. You open your bank app late at night, not to do anything, just to look. You see a number, maybe $1,200. You think, okay, I'm fine. And then your brain goes, yeah, but rent is coming. And suddenly that $1,200 looks like it's holding on for dear life. You're not broke, but you're never comfortable either. A lot of us played The Sims growing up. You could build the perfect life, the perfect house, and never really worry about money. Then you grow up, check your bank account, and realize most millennials can barely afford a one-bedroom apartment. You do that quiet math in your head. If I go out tonight, that's $40. Then there's groceries. Then there's next week. So you don't really manage money. You react to it. And you keep telling yourself you'll get serious later. I used to think things would just click in my 30s. But most people don't suddenly figure money out later. They just keep doing whatever they practiced earlier. Except now the stakes are higher. Nothing really changed. It's just the same habit with more at stake. And honestly, that's good news, because it means you don't need some massive plan. You just need one small habit that doesn't rely on motivation. Even something small, like saving $25 a month, adds up more than people think if you just start early, because consistency is annoying like that. Decision 2. Who you let influence you. In your 20s, it feels like you're your own person. But your normal is basically borrowed. If everyone around you complains about work, you start doing it too. If everyone around you is stressed, you stop questioning why you're stressed. If nobody around you is building anything, you stop feeling weird for drifting. And friendships don't usually end with drama. They end with later. I've had friends I talk to constantly. We didn't argue or drift apart on purpose. We just slowly stopped talking. And you don't notice it in the moment because it feels harmless. But it changes you, because the people you're around the most decide what your brain accepts as normal. So it's not about cutting people off. It's just being honest about this. Who makes you feel more awake? And who makes you feel tired before you even start? Decision 3. How you handle dating. Dating in your 20s teaches you something quietly. When things get complicated, going quiet feels easier than explaining yourself. Replies slow down, days pass, and suddenly something that mattered is just, you cared. You just didn't know how to say it. My first serious relationship started when I was 18. I thought the goal was comfort, safety, being best friends. And for a long time, it worked. Until one day she said it felt like we were just friends, that the spark had slowly turned into routine. I remember thinking, isn't that the point? Isn't routine how you keep something alive? After that, dating felt different. Replies got slower, conversations got shorter. Things didn't end with a fight. We call it ghosting now. It didn't feel dramatic at the time. It felt easier than typing something honest and hitting send. And you get used to handling things that way. When things get real, you don't deal with it. You go quiet, and you start checking out. You still want something real. You just start pulling back the moment it gets uncomfortable. And that's the hard part. It's not dating. It's staying when things stop feeling easy, because attraction fades, comfort fades. And when that happens, What matters is what you do in that moment. Do you say something, or do you just let it go? Decision 4. Whether you choose a direction in work. Most people don't pick a career. They slide into one. You take a job because it makes sense at 22. You stay because you like your coworkers. Then one day you're 29 and you realize you've been doing the same thing for 7 years. Nothing is wrong, and that's the scary part. Staying in a job you don't like isn't playing it safe. It's spending 2,000 hours a year building someone else's thing, while your curiosity gets quieter. And I get why people stay. A new job means interviews, explaining yourself, updating a CV that feels like a work of fiction. So you tell yourself you'll move later, and later turns into a decade. Sometimes the first fix isn't quitting. It's just making sure work isn't the only thing that gives you a personality. If your job disappeared tomorrow, who would be left? Decision 5. How you deal with uncomfortable stuff. For a long time, I told myself I wasn't afraid of failing, but I don't think that was true. I think I just didn't like situations where things could get awkward, or unclear, or where I'd have to actually talk about what I was feeling. I'm not great with emotional outbursts. Mine, other people's. If someone gets emotional, or if I start feeling something strongly, my instinct isn't to jump in and deal with it. I usually just wait. Wait for the moment to pass. Wait for things to calm down. And yeah, now that I'm saying it out loud, that might also explain why my ex is my ex. Because that approach works, until it really doesn't. You don't send the message. You don't bring up the thing that's been sitting there. You tell yourself, it's probably not a big deal, and move on with your day, which is why you keep doing it. You get pretty good at staying calm, at smoothing things over, at not rocking the boat. And honestly, the stuff that sticks with you later isn't the times you tried and messed up. It's the times you said nothing and hoped it would sort itself out. Because when you try something and it goes badly, at least something happens. You learn, you adjust, you move. And your 20s are kind of the easiest time to learn that lesson. Mistakes usually don't ruin your life. They just teach you something. What gets harder to undo later is the habit of staying quiet when something actually needs to be said. Decision 6. How you use your time. This one took me a while to notice, mostly because nothing obvious was happening. Days just started filling up on their own. When we were kids, time worked differently. If you wanted to see someone, you called them, or you knocked on their door. If they weren't home, that was it. You tried again later. We'd play outside until it got dark. Someone's mom would yell from a window, game over. Even being online took effort. You had to sit down at the computer. And if it didn't work, you didn't refresh for an hour. You just did something else. Now it's different. You wake up, check your phone, answer something, scroll a bit, sit down for a minute, check one thing, reply to a message, and suddenly it's evening. Nothing big happened. The day just went, and the math is kind of brutal. Lose 2 hours a day without noticing? That's 14 hours a week. I used to say I didn't have time, but when I actually paid attention, the time was there. It just disappeared in small pieces I didn't notice while it was happening. Decision 7. Who you compare yourself to. This one never feels like a decision. You're not sitting there thinking, all right, time to compare my life to someone else. You're just scrolling, killing time, waiting for something. For me, it happened on Instagram. I saw my ex with her new boyfriend. He looked confident, put together. The kind of guy where your brain just goes, yeah, that makes sense. What surprised me wasn't jealousy. It was this quiet pause where I thought, so that's the guy now. Before that, my day was fine, normal, nothing wrong. After that, I started thinking about things I hadn't been thinking about an hour earlier. How I look, what I'm doing, whether I'm actually moving forward or just staying busy. Nothing in my life had changed. I just looked sideways for a second. That's how comparison sneaks in. Not all at once, just enough to make you feel late. Late to something nobody clearly explained, on a timeline you never agreed to. And if you're not careful, you stop asking what you actually want and start wondering why you don't have what someone else seems to have yet. Decision 8. The habits you're building without noticing. I had this moment where I realized I could get through an entire day and barely remember any of it. Not because it was bad, just because it all blended together. Nothing was really wrong. It just didn't feel like I chose any of it. Growing up, boredom was normal. You'd lie on the floor, kick a ball against a wall, stare at the ceiling until your brain came up with something to do. Now, boredom lasts about 3 seconds before your phone's in your hand and you're checking something. At some point, your days start feeling like reruns. Same structure, different date. And you don't wake up one day and decide you're done being curious. You just stop interrupting the pattern. Maybe later quietly turns into later. And while it's happening, it doesn't feel like a choice. It just becomes your default. Sometimes it's enough to pause and ask, is this really how I want my days to run? Decision 9. Whether you accept being wrong. This one took me longer than it should have. Not because I didn't mess things up, but because I got really good at staying in things that clearly weren't it anymore. And I think part of that is sunk cost. You stay because you've already put time into it. A relationship, a job, a version of yourself. It's like sitting through a bad movie just because you already paid for the ticket. A couple of years after my ex had moved on, someone asked me, "Oh, are you actually okay with all that now?" And I said, yeah, immediately. Too fast. Like my mouth answered before I checked in. Because once you say, honestly, I don't think this is working, people don't just nod. They ask what's next. And most of the time, you don't know yet. You just know something feels off. So you stick with the old answer. Not to lie, just to avoid having to explain something you haven't figured out. That's what staying wrong looked like for me. Not being clueless, just holding on because letting go felt harder than staying a little uncomfortable. Maybe being an adult isn't about always being right. Maybe it's just noticing when you're saying something out of habit and realizing you don't mean it anymore. Decision 10. What you're actually building toward. This one doesn't feel like a decision while you're in it. Nobody in their 20s sits down and says, all right, what am I building with my life? If you did, you'd probably close it 5 minutes later. It happens more quietly than that. You just keep living the way you live, handling things the way you handle them, putting things off the way you usually do. And over time, that starts to mean something. By 30, people already have a sense of you. They know if you follow through. They know if you disappear. They know if your yeah actually means yes. Not because anyone judged you, just because they've seen enough patterns. And once that picture settles, it's not impossible to change, it's just harder. Because expectations are set, roles are set. People already know what to expect from you. Even if you're not trying to build anything, something still gets built. A reputation, a default version of you. And doing nothing doesn't pause that process. It just lets it lock in. So the question isn't really, what do I want to build someday? If this version of you stayed the same, would you be okay with that? Nothing breaks all at once. Small things add up. That's the butterfly effect. Or the Tamagotchi effect. Comment if your Tamagotchi has died.